not one single Oscar nomination that the movie Heat received. Not one. I remember when the Oscars came out the following year after Heat's release, and I was expecting Heat to get at least one Oscar, something for acting or the cinematography, the directing, the writing, something. Heat got nothing. I remember being kind of upset about that. And all these years later, it's still it's just kind of baffling that Heat could even get it even get even a technical award nomination. Like he got zero Oscar nominations, and that is a cinematic crime. Heat, a film that I love very, very, very much, was the first film I saw on my own by myself. I remember it being I don't know, something of a little bit of a monumental moment. I didn't go with my parents. I didn't go with my brothers. I went by myself. I was living in Queens at the time, and I took a cab to the movie theater. I think I took a cab to the movie theater. Now I'm not exactly sure how I got there. Maybe I was driven there, I think, by my father. But I definitely remember on the way back, I took my first cab ride by myself. And it was the first Michael Mann film I'd ever seen in the theater. And I believe it was the first Michael Mann film I ever seen, period. I don't remember seeing any other Michael Mann films before that. The day I saw Heat was a first for a number of things. Heat, in my eyes, is unquestionably one of the best crime drama movies ever made. It might very well be the best. It is also unquestionably one of the best films ever made. And is definitely the best cops versus criminals type of movie ever crafted. Nothing I can think of right now comes close. Heat is just an absolute masterclass of directing, of acting, cinematography, action. It's just it's about as perfect as a film can get. But at the time of its release, though, it didn't have a whole lot of hype. For a film that now is, immensely influential, that wasn't the case when it was first released. And it certainly wasn't a low-key release. There was a good degree of hype behind it. But it's it came out in theaters, definitely received overall, rave reviews from critics and from the audiences who saw it. But Heat wasn't that big of a hit. I'm not sure of the exact figures of what it made at the box office. I think domestically it might have made somewhere north of 70 million. I may not be correct about that figure. And more so the cultural impact, it just didn't have much as you would have maybe expected for a film that had such a stacked cast. One of the best casts ever assembled for a film. Yeah, it's just a who's who of just great actors in this. And of course the best performances. I don't even know the best performance. Everybody's awesome. So I can't say there's really one standout performance amongst another. But I guess if you had to make an argument, who are the best performances in this? Or at least the MVPs. Then the most valuable players are Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Val Kilmer. They are a terrific trinity of performers in this film. Their characters are some of the best characters ever produced for screen. Complex, compelling, cool. They're just the greatest. And there's just so much greatness. Just again, all the characters in this movie are great. Even the minor ones, they're striking. They stand out. This is just I've used this word before, I'll use it again, it is cinematic perfection. This cast, this movie. And that's why I thought it was so surprising at the time. It just didn't garner that much attention. Like I said, it got no Oscar nominations, none. And there wasn't any type of backlash to that. Not even a minor one. It was no one really, at least outwardly, seemed to care all that much. Maybe if the internet was much more prevalent back then, social media, then maybe there would have been some rumblings of like, hey, this is unfair, and I even won Oscar nomination, and it wasn't just from the Academy, it was just from other organizations as well. They gave her awards. Like, he didn't really get much of anything, didn't get a whole lot of box office. Again, it certainly wasn't a film that was forgotten. Like, it was a film that people knew about, but like, it wasn't the huge, massive hit that I thought it was going to be, that I hoped it would be. And I remember at the time, like, I was, whoever, who would listen to me, I'm like, you gotta see this movie, you gotta see this movie. I remember I showed Heat to people who I really cared about, and by the time Heat was finished, their reaction was, it was good. I was like thinking, what? This film is amazing. Like, why nobody, even those closest to me, are not seeing the undeniable greatness of this masterwork? Like, why? Like, you can't. Maybe I'm looking at things wrong. Like, maybe I'm overrating this movie. I don't know. And yeah, like, I don't know. It wasn't like for example, the classic scene between Robert De Niro and Pacino inside the diner. People did talk about that scene a lot, and actors release, like, that was like the one thing when people were talking about Heat from the beginning all the way to now. That was like a consistent, everybody like remarked about how, powerful that scene was. Like, one of the best, like, pieces of acting ever put on the screen. Yeah, the way they go back and forth with each other, the rhythm they have with each other, like, the way how it's like shot, lit, everything. That is a perfect scene. Anybody who says otherwise, you do not know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's just amazing, that scene. But other than that scene, no one really talked about anything with Heat for a while so much. And then it's like, all right, well, I mean, again, Heat was not a forgotten movie. You'll hear from time to time, like maybe from publications or fellow film fans or whatever, like, Heat, that's a film that doesn't have enough of a spotlight on it, that you definitely need to watch. And that's how it was for a while, at least to my perception. And then somewhere in the 2000s, it started like picking up some steam, Heat, and like, all of a sudden, like, now it wasn't just classic Robert De Niro Pacino scene in the cat in the diner. It was the bank robbery scene and the shootout that followed it. Particularly was the shootout in the streets with Neil and his crew versus Vincent and his crew. One of the best action scenes ever committed to screen. Like, I mean, I'm like really being hyperbolic here, but it's true. In this case, like, it's an amazing scene, and I started hearing more people talking about that scene in particular, and like, doing breakdowns of that scene. I remember once this guy who I knew a long time ago, he had show me, he already knew I'd seen Heat. He had seen Heat. We both seen it multiple times, but he had got it on, I think, DVD before I did. And at the time, he had like an HD set. I didn't have an HD set at the time. Like, I was so wanted one so badly, but I didn't have one yet. And he had this nice HD set. Nice HD TV set. And he showed me the bank robbery scene and the shootout in the streets, and I was just amazed at like how great it looked. And I was just amazed by the scene itself. Like, no matter how many times I've seen that scene, I'm just, in awe of it. And he was too. And yeah, not just talk about that scene, but just talk about Heat. It just started growing more and more attention for that film, how great it was. And then a few years after that, like, I was really seeing even more like greater signs, stronger signs that this film was starting to have a real cultural impact. The Dark Knight, the release of The Dark Knight, and anybody who knows Heat, or even like the bare, I guess, elements of Heat, that opening is a clear homage to Heat. The Dark Knight, and I thought that was so awesome. Like, that is Heat. Chris Nolan was greatly influenced by Heat. Thought it was so amazing watching Dark Knight for the first time, and not just the opening. The whole entire movie is a homage to Heat, and then later on to hear Christopher Nolan admit that, which he didn't have to admit anything, is super obvious, but like, the the Heat was like a driving force in his like creativity for like crafting the Dark Knight story. The whole cops versus criminal like dynamic, and in this case, I guess cops versus criminals and a vigilante, in the mix. But in a way, how it's shot, just the way it's aesthetic, like the Dark Knight was heavily influenced by Heat, and I thought that was spectacular. And a few years after that, seeing how Grand Theft Auto 5, it took me a while to finally get a chance to sit down and have the discipline to play Grand Theft Auto 5. Those Grand Theft Auto games were so long. And I got to the point in my life where, like, I used to play video games all the time. But then it got to a point, like, it took me a lot to even sit down and play a short game. So when I finally got a chance to play Grand Theft Auto 5, I'm like, okay, let's just finally do this. And then when the game opens up with, like, a huge homage to Heat, like, these missions you gotta play, it was just amazing. Like, this film is finally getting the dude that it should have gotten a long time ago. It should have gotten it when it was initially released. And yeah, it was heartwarming, like playing those scenes and watching those scenes, and just seeing the continued love for Heat. Like, Heat went from like, kind of an unsung, masterpiece, great movie, to like a genuine, well-known, big time classic, and not just from its era, just period. And it was also just heartwarming that that those who were closest to me who saw Heat, who may have not been able at first to see the gold of the movie, watched it a second time. And this was in the 2000s, and it would like basically, he'd said explicitly, but it's like, Matt, you were right. Like I knew it was right. they finally saw for the masterpiece that it is, and that was an incredible moment. And I'm really grateful that those closest to me decided to give it another chance. I'm so glad that people who were hesitant for whatever reason, or maybe not hesitant, they just didn't get an opportunity to see it when it first came out, saw it and loved it. Loved this awesome movie. Michael Mann's crown jewel in his amazing body of work. I'm just so glad that Heat finally got its due, and it continues to get its due, continues to greatly influence all that who experience it. I'm just so glad now that I live in a time that Heat's intensity continues to burn and burn brightly. And it is great to see that it will never cool, that it will never wane, and that's awesome.